Hey everyone, and welcome back. In this section, we'll take a look at functions inside of Microsoft Excel. We'll start off in this lecture by looking at the lookup functions. So there are three types of lookup function. We have the VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, and a newer, more improved version called XLOOKUP. And we'll look at all three of these in this lecture. And with that said, let's get started. For this lecture, we'll take a break from our sample sales dataset that we used throughout the last section, and here we'll use a dataset containing information on movies from the last 4 decades. And you can find this dataset within the course materials folder for this section. And also, within the datasets folder, you'll find another copy in case you make a mistake and want to revert back to the original. So, to briefly introduce the dataset, let's have a quick look at the columns. So the dataset has 15 columns, and most of these are quite self-explanatory. The company is the production company, the gross was the revenue of the movie, the runtime is the duration, the score is the IMDb user rating, and then the votes was the number of user votes received. And now that we know what each of our columns represent, we'll take a look at the most common type of lookup function, which is the VLOOKUP. And this function allows us to find data in a vertically structured table, such as our dataset here, where we have column headings and then data in each row. I've gone ahead here and created a new column, which I've called movie name. In the cell below, we'll enter the name of a movie. So I'll use one of my all-time favorites, which is Pulp Fiction. And just to show you quickly here, this movie is present in the dataset. And then to the right of our new column, I've also created a gross column, which, as we can see here, currently contains no data. But in this column, we'll use the VLOOKUP function to return the gross revenue for our selected movie. To initiate a function, we'll need to use the equals sign, like when we created our formulas. So we can have equals VLOOKUP, and then here, Excel will provide us with a description of what the function does. And then when Excel suggests the function we want, we can press Tab to autocomplete. And then here, Excel will provide us with some guidance on what information it's looking for. And this can be particularly helpful when working with unfamiliar functions. First off, it's looking for the lookup value, which in this case is the name of our movie, which we have in cell Q2. Then we'll enter a comma, and then we have to input our table array. And this will be the table of data that we want to search in. So in our case, this will be the entire table. So a quick and easy way to select the entire table within our function here is to select the first value in our dataset, so the value in cell A2, and then we can press Ctrl plus Shift plus down arrow, and then Ctrl plus Shift plus right arrow to select everything. And here we can then enter another comma to move on to the column index number, and this is basically the number of the column that we want to search in. So if we look here, we can see that our gross column number is 13. So we'll enter 13, and then finally we have our range lookup. And here we want an exact match, so I'll select false, and now we can hit enter. Okay, and seeing as this is a currency, let's quickly format this cell as a currency, and here we can see that Pulp Fiction had a gross revenue of $213,928,762. And if you compare this to the value in the dataset, we'll see that it matches. One of the main benefits of using a lookup is that it is dynamic. So if we were to change our movie name here to Rogue One, a Star Wars story, we can see that it will automatically return the gross revenue for that film too, which was just slightly over $1 billion. And next we have the HLOOKUP. This works in a very similar way to the VLOOKUP, but instead works for data where the dataset is structured horizontally. In the previous lecture, we learned about the transpose function, which allows us to switch the orientation of our dataset. Let's now use this tool to swap the rows and columns of our movies dataset. So I'll just select the entire dataset with Ctrl plus A, create a new worksheet, and we'll transpose our data. And with that done, we can now take a look at an example using HLOOKUP. And to keep things consistent, we'll find the same information as we did before, which was the gross revenue for Pulp Fiction. So we'll add our movie title here, and then in the cell to the right of it, in B17, we'll add our function. So equals HLOOKUP, and then here just pressing the tab button again, and then the syntax and our arguments will be pretty much the same. we'll enter our lookup value, which is the movie name in cell A17. Our table array will again be the entire data set. So again, using Control plus Shift, and then the arrow keys to select everything. And then the main difference here is that this time our column index number becomes our row index number. But our gross revenue is still the 13th row in this list, so we can enter 13, and then we'll go for an exact match again. And here we can see it returns the same number. So both VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP do have some limitations. They both only work if the lookup value is towards the left of the data. So if our movie name was on the right of our dataset, we wouldn't be able to specify a minus value to search backwards. And I'll quickly demonstrate this to you now. So if you want, feel free to just watch here for this demonstration. So let's cut our movie name column and paste it at the far right hand side of our dataset. And now, if you try and do a lookup again on the movie name, and using the same dataset of course, using our same gross amount column, which this time would be column number -3, we can see that we get an NA error. And this is because VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP can't search backwards, and they always have to go from left to right in our dataset. And this is where XLOOKUP can come in handy. XLOOKUP is a more modern and a flexible alternative to V and HLOOKUP that combines the functionality of both, as well as adding some other additional helpful options too. So currently, XLOOKUP is only available in Excel 2021, Excel for the web, and Office 365. So let's now use our XLOOKUP function to fix the issue that we had with our VLOOKUP when we were trying to search backwards. We'll start by just deleting the entire VLOOKUP function, and then in its place we'll start our XLOOKUP, so equals, and then XLOOKUP, and then the function name is just XLOOKUP. Our lookup value will be the same, but this time our lookup array will just be the movie name column. So I'll select the first value, which is the shining, and then with Control plus Shift and down arrow, I'll select the rest of the column. And then for our return array, we'll just specify the gross column. And because there's a few missing values in this column, Control, Shift and down arrow will not work, so I'll just enter the cell range manually. And we know from our movie name column, the last row is row number 7669. And then now, if we hit enter, we'll see that we get our result as expected. So the ability to search backwards is a massive advantage of XLOOKUP over the older functions like VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP. Another helpful feature offered by XLOOKUP is the ability to specify a return value for if the data is not found. Currently, if we change our movie name to something completely random, we'll get an NA error. And this is because the value was not found in the dataset. Instead, we could edit our function and add in an if not found argument, which will be returned if Excel can't find the specified lookup value in our lookup array. So let's go back and edit our function, and then we'll move on to the next argument by adding a comma, and then specify our value, which will be movie not in list. We can then close our quotes and then hit enter, but now our NA error has been changed to a nicer message of our choosing. And of course, if we put our movie name back to how it was before, it returns the correct value. And then the final thing that I'd like to show you about XLOOKUP is the ability to return multiple values simultaneously. Going back to our XLOOKUP function, our return array argument currently specifies the range from L2 to L7669. However, we could change this to include an additional column. So let's say the company name in column M. So all we need to do is adjust the return array to be from cell L2 to M7669. And now, if we hit enter, we get not only the gross revenue, but also the corresponding company name returned in the next cell too. And with that, that covers everything that we need to know about the lookup functions available inside of Microsoft Excel. Lookup functions are a very helpful feature, so I recommend going back and really making sure that you understand these fully before moving on to the next lecture, where we'll take a look at some conditional functions.